Next, let's find out whether monopolists are allocatively efficient. Recall that the criteria for or the condition in order to achieve allocative efficiency is that the price that you observe in the market should be equivalent to the marginal cost. In other words, the consumer's valuation of the good should be equivalent to the cost that a firm incurs in terms of resources to produce one unit of the good. So, with that, let's find out whether monopolists can be allocatively efficient. So again, we know that a monopolist will produce an output maximizing quantity or output of QM, and it will charge a price of PM as given by the downward sloping demand curve. So where would a monopolists be at in terms of marginal cost? Well, at QM, the marginal cost incurred by the firm will be given by the MC curve, and that would be MCM, M for monopoly. So you notice that at this output level, the price that a monopolist charges is more than its marginal cost. So this reflects that a society values each unit of the good more than what it costs the monopolist to produce that unit. So what does that mean? It means that there is under allocation of resources and more of the good should be produced, whatever it could be, like potato or electronic product or whatever, right? So there's under production of this good, and too little resources are being allocated to the production, and hence the monopolist is not allocatively efficient. And the extent of allocative inefficiency is reflected by the gap between price and MC. Larger the gap, the greater will be the allocative inefficiency in the market. So could the allocative inefficiency be traced to the characteristics of a monopoly market? Well, definitely yes. Due to the very high barriers to entry, the monopolist faces little to no competition, and its product will end up being the only product with no substitute, and hence a unique product, which gives the monopolist extensive market power and ability to set price, reflected by the graphically by the downward sloping demand curve. So it can set a price by changing its output. And because of the market power and the fact that its demand is price inelastic or relatively price inelastic, it's able to charge a higher price by restricting its output in order to fulfill its profit maximizing objective. And consumers would have no choice but to fork out this high price as there's no viable substitute to turn to. So let's compare that to the case of PC industry in order to see the extent of allocative inefficiency in the monopoly industry. So in this case, we're comparing a monopolist firm to a PC industry, not to a PC firm. Okay, it's to a PC industry. You may wonder whether it's a fair comparison to make, because on one hand we have a firm, on the other hand we have the whole industry or the market. Well, it is a fair comparison because recall that the monopolist is the only dominant firm or the only seller in the market, and therefore the demand will be the market demand and its output will be the market supply. So if we do a thought experiment and we imagine a monopolist breaking up into numerous smaller firms where each firm has no market power, just like a PC firm, then we can directly draw a parallel between the two scenarios, right? Between the monopolist and a PC industry. So they will have the same demand as represented by the downward sloping demand curve. This will be the demand faced by the monopolist. It will also be the demand faced by in the PC industry. That will be the market demand in the PC industry. And similarly, the monopolist marginal cost curve can be translated to become the supply curve for the PC industry. Well, if you want to understand how we can interpret the marginal cost to be the supply, market supply, you can refer to the earlier topic of demand and supply, where we say supply curve is upward sloping because it reflects an increasing marginal cost of production. Okay, so we have established that this marginal cost curve of the monopolist is also the market supply curve for the PC industry. Now, with the market supply and market demand, We can obtain the output, market output in the PC industry and the price it charges, right? We just use our equilibrium theory of demand and supply. So the output in the market will be given by QPC, which is where the demand curve intersects with the supply curve, and the corresponding price would be PPC, which also stem from the point of intersection. So, what can you say about monopolist in relation to the scenario, the PC industry, right? So, if you compare the two, and we assume that the cost and demand conditions will be exactly the same between the two scenarios, because we assume ceteris paribus, or we assume that there is no difference to make a fair comparison in terms of demand and cost, everything is the same. Okay, so you notice that the monopolist will produce a lower output of QM and charges a higher price because PM is more than PPC, right? And we know that QPC will be the socially optimal output because that is where allocative efficiency will be achieved, because at QPC, the price is PPC and it is equivalent to the marginal cost of production, which is also PPC as given by the MC curve. Therefore, in comparison to this optimal output, the monopolist is underproducing or under allocating resources to the production of this good. And therefore, we say that a monopolist is allocative inefficient. So this is a case where the market dominance of the firm is causing less than optimal allocation of the resources, and hence there's market failure, right? There's market failure. It is not producing the optimal amount of the good that the society desires that will maximize the society's welfare, but producing less than that. And it all stems from the fact that monopolist has extensive market power. In other words, it has market dominance. We will further study the case of market dominance causing market failure in another segment. But in this segment, you just need to remember that monopolist is allocatively inefficient. Now let's move on to dynamic efficiency for monopolist. In terms of ability and incentive to innovate, it definitely has the ability because it's able to earn supernormal profits in the long run and accumulate this supernormal profit and use that to fund its expensive research and development projects or any other non-price competition projects. So in terms of being tech progressive and technologically advanced, it definitely has the ability to do that and innovate. In terms of incentive, it is more debatable because on one hand, innovation will bring about supernormal profits which are protected by high barriers to entry to the monopolist industry and the fact that there is imperfect degree of knowledge which will also protect its fruits of research and development and innovation, right? So in view of this, monopolist has the incentive to innovate. But on the other hand, because of the same reasons of high barriers to entry and which cause it to face little competition, it could grow very complacent and therefore sees no incentive or no need to innovate and to become tech progressive, right? So in that sense, whether the monopolist can be dynamically efficient is a debatable issue.